There's Member of Parliament Trevor Williams. Next to him is the General Secretary of the party, Mr. David Patterson, followed by Mr. Kemraj Ramchadan, Leader of the party. The party Chairman, Mr. Nigel Hughes, Vice Chairman Moses Naditu, Member of Parliament Valerie Guido, and Member of Parliament Mrs. Kathy Hughes. We will have opening statements from Mr. Kemraj Ramchadan. Following him, Mr. Nigel Hughes will make some brief remarks. Then Mr. David Patterson, the General Secretary, will give some guidelines that the party recently drafted. Mr. Trevor Williams, the Member of Parliament, he has an opening statement, and he will be followed by Mr. Valerie Guido. So I will ask Mr. Ramchadan to make his opening statement.
Thank you very much, Beverly, and good day to one and all. I want to state that on the 31st of August, the Alliance for Change National Executive deliberated at the Georgetown headquarters the very many issues concerning and surrounding the offer of resignation by the Chairman of the Alliance for Change, Mr. Nigel Hughes, which had occurred a couple of weeks before. At that National Executive meeting, the unanimous agreement was that the National Executive Committee will not accept the resignation, and consequent upon that, Mr. Nigel Hughes withdrew his offer of resignation. He remains thus the Chairman of the Alliance for Change. Also, at that very important meeting, in view of certain public perceptions of a conflict of interest and so on, we also deliberated on a code of conduct, and the draft has been accomplished at that meeting, which we're going to deal with at this press conference, primarily through the General Secretary, Mr. David Patterson. Those are my opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Ramchadan. Mr. Hughes.
Good afternoon, members of the media. After a period of reflection and after consultation with elders in my community, elders in the wider Guyanese community, consultation with colleagues, consultation with a wide variety of people both in Guyana, in the Caribbean, and in the diaspora, and most importantly perhaps after consultation with ordinary members of the Guyanese community in various constituencies, both in Region 4 and wider afield, and after a very long, protracted discussion on Saturday at the National Executive Committee of the Alliance for Change, they have all expressed the view that my decision to leave politics and resign from the position of Chairman of the Alliance for Change should be reconsidered, and they have urged me to reconsider that decision. They have indicated that provided I am still or remain committed to the development of a better Guyana in which all of us participate, I should reconsider that decision, and as a consequence of those deliberations with the elders, with various persons in the community, the NEC, and the actual man in the street whose opinion I've solicited daily on several occasions, I have decided to withdraw my resignation as Chairman of the Alliance for Change, and I remain committed to the people of Guyana, to the development of Guyana, in which all of us can equally participate in the decision-making process. I remain even more committed to the absolute necessity for constitutional change. The events that have led to my resignation, I offered an explanation for it, and my initial resignation was driven by the fact that I did not want to become a source of distraction from the excellent work the AFC had done in carrying the challenge to the whole concept of the basis upon which prices in relation to the hydropower project were arrived at, the basis upon which the impact of that project was arrived at, and the basis upon which the AFC determined that it would await the decision of the Inter-American Development Bank's due diligence process before taking a final determination on its position whether or not to support the hydropower project. I wish to make it very clear that the AFC at no time indicated its support for the project, but merely in relation to the two bills that were passed on the same day of my resignation, was merely facilitating a process that would allow the IDB to complete and conclude its due diligence process. I offer my profuse apologies to the several members of the public who are supporters of the AFC who were disappointed at the fact that this information had not been shared with them before, who expressed grave disappointment with the fact that I had found myself in a position of conflict. And if you permit me a minute, I will just indicate to you the sequence of events and the difficulties that ensued after that. Back in 2009, my firm, and me in particular, we were retained to represent a company called Site Global, which is a part of the Blackstone Group, which, as you must know, is one of the largest capital investment groups in the world. That group indicated that they were interested in entering into discussions with the government of Guyana for the purposes of setting up a hydropower project at Amalia Falls. Most of you would know that it is a requirement of the government of Guyana that any foreign investor who comes to this country must incorporate and establish in this country a company, and that is one of the prerequisites of any investment agreement. The Site Global Company, with whom I have the retainer, determined that they would incorporate Amalia Falls Hydropower Inc. And normally in circumstances like that where they did not have any immediate intentions of establishing a physical office in Guyana, asked that I act in the position as company secretary. I incorporated the company, agreed to act as company secretary, but I need to point out that the discussions in relation to the Amalia Falls hydropower project were conducted between Site Global, the China Development Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, and the government of Guyana. I was not part of those discussions. I was not invited to offer advice in those discussions. My role as company secretary was literally for the purposes of ensuring that the company complied with its local regulations. I was retained by Site Global and Amalia to provide legal advice on a range of matters. I really would like to disclose to the public whether or not I was received remuneration for my role as company secretary. I have today asked my principals at a site, the client, to permit me to release that information. After that company was incorporated, the discussions continued between Site and Amalia, between Site and the government and the partners I've identified before. In 2012, in August, I became the chairman of the Alliance for Change, and shortly after that, when the issue of Amalia Falls became an issue, I disclosed to the party that I was the lawyer for the party. I was the lawyer for the Amalia Falls, the company, and the lawyer for Site, and I asked to be recused from their deliberations on that matter. That disclosure was made to the management committee, and the party allowed me to recuse myself. You may appreciate that I am not at liberty to release to the public either the names of the clients that I represent or the nature of my representation of them insofar as the advice I may proffer to them. I am constrained by professional ethics because the privilege is that of the client, not that of the lawyer. And unless the client permits me to release information on the nature of my engagement with them, or the fact that I personally represent them, I could not personally, in my personal capacity, share that information. I deeply regret the fact that the public was not made aware of this by me, but I ask that I be forgiven because I, for professional reasons, could not disclose that. On the issue of whether or not the party, the Alliance for Change, should have shared that information in a timely manner with the public, we've already issued a statement for that, and the General Secretary has offered the party's apologies for not being more forthright and robust in the manner in which that information was shared. I accept full responsibility for the consequences of the non-disclosure by the party, because even though I had recused myself from participating, it was a matter for the party to consider at the time. After 2012, when this continued to be an issue, I did not participate in any of the discussions between the party and the IDB, the party and Site Global, on the party and the government on the issue of Amelia Hydro Falls. I will stop there, and I'm prepared to take any questions that you may have on this issue. And again, I just wish to thank all those persons with whom I consulted on the issue of whether or not I should withdraw from politics and whether or not I should accept the refusal of the AFC to not accept my resignation, and I thank them for their very candid opinions. This has been a very difficult period, and it is my hope that as we move forward now, the country can actually start to discuss the issue of hydropower and how we go about finding consensus and how we go about ensuring that we have the best and brightest available to us, whether they're in Guyana or out of Guyana, so that we might actually pursue hydropower that will allow our energy needs to satisfy the future needs of this country and allow the country's potential to be released in a manner in which we've never seen before. One of the lessons, I hope that we take away several lessons from this incident. One of the lessons that we have learned is that the present arrangements that allow the executive to enter into an agreement of this magnitude and of this significance for national development without consultation at the initial stages, at its inception, at its conception, with stakeholders in the community, including members of the opposition, members of the business community. I hope we've learned our lesson and realized that that model no longer obtains. Another lesson that we have learned from this episode is that it is clear that major international investors are weary about investing in major projects in Guyana which involve their money unless there is total consensus on the project, which means that for the project to be successful from the inception, all principal stakeholders, whether in or out of Parliament, ought to be part of the process. More importantly, what it has demonstrated again is that I believe that our constitutional arrangements that facilitated the initial engagement on this project back in 2008-2009 during the previous administration, without any consultation with the other principal stakeholders in the country, cannot continue, and we cannot continue to have constitutional arrangements that vest all the executive power in the hands of a government which may or may not be a minority. We need to reconsider and revisit those arrangements. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Batson.
Thank you, Beverly. Good afternoon, members of the press. As mentioned by the leader and the vice chairman and the chairman, the Lines for Change held its National Executive Committee meeting on August 31st with a matter of conflict interest guidelines for party members and party leadership was discussed. And coming from that, arising from that discussion, we have provided and adopted guidelines for our leaders. I will read it and there will be copies available to the press for the guidelines. Firstly, a conflict of interest may arise where elected either management committee and or the National Executive Committee of the Lines for Change has a private material interest that can be affected by the outcome of deliberations in which the leader is participating. Secondly, an AFC leader who is a member of the National Assembly, Regional Democratic Council, or Neighborhood Democratic Council shall additionally be guided by and subjected to the rules of conflict of interest in his or her respective office. Thirdly, AFC leader is at liberty to offer unlimited professional services in pursuit of his or her constitutional right to work, and shall not be required to violate confidentiality with legitimate matters. Fourthly, an AFC leader has a duty to disclose before the decision-making body of which he or she is a member any private material interest in matters being deliberated by either or both of these bodies. Fifthly, it shall be an agenda item of our management and national executive committee meetings for an AFC leader to voluntarily make periodic disclosures of a private material interest in any matter being deliberated. Sixth, either of these decision-making bodies shall determine, in the absence of the AFC leader in question, whether the nature of the disclosure constitutes a conflict of interest situation over a matter being discussed. Seventh, where it is determined that a conflict of interest exists, the member in question shall recuse him or herself and not participate in deliberations on that particular matter in which he or she has disclosed material interest. Eighth, the leadership body may invite an AFC leader who has made disclosures of a material interest to offer technical or specialized opinions on a matter being deliberated. That leader shall not exercise a vote or otherwise decide on the matter. 9. Public disclosure by the party of any private material interest of the AFC leader shall be decided on a case-by-case basis after due consideration of confidentiality and third-party interest, and shall be made only with the consent of the said leader. Finally, an AFC leader who knowingly withholds or fails to make timely disclosure of private material interest in the matter being deliberated before a decision-making body of which he or she is a member shall be subject to disciplinary processes under party rules. These guidelines on disclosure purpose are adopted by the AFC National Executive Meeting, 31st of August 2020.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. We now have a statement by Williams.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Speaker, please allow all day. The Alliance for Change calls on the government to take immediate steps to repair the women to Common Road and heed the call of residents. The AFC calls on the government to act now and ensure that the road is rehabilitated. It is time the Guyana government recognized the importance of this road to the livelihood of thousands of ordinary Guyanese, local and international businessmen and investors. Through this access road, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of forestry products and other resources from the natural resource sector is transported. Transporters continually grapple with avoidable destruction and wear and tear to their vehicles. It is clear that the government either does not recognize the importance of this road to the economy or simply does not care. The deplorable condition of this road, especially during the rainy season, has remained a sore point to commuters and major discouragement to traveling residents and visitors alike. The Ministry of Public Works and contractors have over the years been guilty of providing substandard repairs and maintenance. Potholes filled with sand and road quickly reopen when trucks and other vehicles use the road. It is a waste of taxpayers' money. Rusal Bauxite Company has demonstrated that the same road, that is the section under their care, can be better maintained by using laterite. It provides a longer lasting surface. The AFC calls on the government and the police force to respect the right of the people to protest and to desist from using force and violent confrontation when attempting to disperse peaceful protesters. The parties in receipt of information and complaints of brutality and excessive force being used to break up the protest. We have reports of a pregnant woman being kicked in the abdomen by a police rank and of another resident being beaten by another rank. The AFC is therefore urging the government to heed the urgent request to meet stakeholders and peaceably resolve this deteriorating situation. We call on the government to stop the brutality now.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Ms. Riddle?
Thank you very much. AFC Heritage Greeting. On this yet another celebration of Indian Heritage Month, the Lions for Change salutes the first people of this nation for the kindness and understanding they have demonstrated when foreigners first landed on the shores of our beautiful homeland, and continue to demonstrate on this day by willingly sharing land, waterways, forests, precious stones, and every resources that it has to offer to the people who stayed and who are now our brothers and sisters in this multi-cultural land nation. We celebrate the natural artists in our first people that make them stand out as brilliant artists and craftsmen and women, and talented sportsmen and women. We celebrate their highly scientific knowledge, of which only a minute percentage has been tapped into by way of herbal medicines. And it is thanks to our first people that today our nation is now earning much needed revenues from carbon credits earned from the forest that they so carefully preserved for centuries. These contributions must be recognized, acknowledged, and respected. Indeed, it should be acknowledged also that the descendants of foreigners owe their very existence to the kindness and compassion of our first people. And for those in whose veins runs even a drop of this strong and noble blood, it is only fitting that they acknowledge it with pride and make it their duty to learn more about their ancestors. While it is a fact that efforts have been made by various governments, including the government of today, to make education more accessible through scholarships to our first people and all hinterlands, there is still much room for improvement. Technical and vocational schools are needed in regions 1, 8, and 9 to teach skills that are pertinent to jobs that are to be had in those regions. It is a great shame when vehicles provided to villages for village transportation cannot be repaired by persons within those communities, but mechanics have to be transported in to do these repairs and servicing. There is need for a university campus in Region 9, which could service both Regions 9 and 8, since hundreds of secondary school students graduate from school every year with excellent grades in CXC and are at a loss of what to do next with their young lives from then on. In our health sector, it is absolutely necessary that qualified nurses or medicines are in service at all equivalent health centers or health posts. Since their training are but for a few months, which is too short a time to equip them with the skills to handle complex cases, community health workers must only be allowed to assist these qualified nurses, and the Minister of Health must get serious with this situation. Just like any other Guyanese, our first people need and deserve the best health care this country has to offer. The Alliance for Change also calls on all miners to observe best practices in mining, taking into consideration that the hinterland is the home of our first people and waterways especially must not be polluted, since it is the source of drinking water and food for communities. In closing, the Alliance for Change wishes the first people of Guyana a happy and brilliant Heritage Month and encourages them to keep their beautiful culture, traditions, and languages intact by teaching them to their children from a young age so that they can grow up fearlessly, proud, and respectful of their special status in society.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Reedy. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, we will now open the floor for your questions. I just ask that you observe the usual courtesy of identifying yourself, the media house you represent, before asking the question. I see you standing at the back and I recognize you.
Ourselves, Mr. Site Global wound up its business here in Guyana? And if so, have you resigned as company secretary?
Slight Global doesn't actually have business here. You mean American Falls, the company? Is that the question?
You're a company secretary for
From Niagara Falls. Site Global is an American company that has no presence here. The company that is registered and incorporated in Guyana is Amelia Falls Hydropower Inc.
That
So,
company
yeah, so you're asking me, is that company?
has one of it.
Well, there's a legal process for the company to wind up its business. That process has not begun, if that is your question. The legal process has not begun.
And the second part, are you still,
I'm still on record as the secretary for Amelia Falls Hydropower.
will you resign from that position?
Well,
Stay as chairman of the AFC?
Well, my position as secretary of that company and providing legal services to the company is subject to the terms of engagement between myself and Site Global. Those discussions, of course, as you know, are private, and insofar as their decision as to what they want to do with the company or whether they wish to continue as company secretary has to be considered under the ambit of the retainer agreement, and we will be engaging that. But as it stands now, physically, yes, I am still on record as the company secretary. The company has no operations here. It's winding up its office here, but it has not started the legal process of winding up the company. It's resolving its operations here, and I think you yourself must have been in the seat of the press statement that the site themselves issued out of New York.
And two, why should the public take you seriously on anything you say now? How do they know you wouldn't believe them again? Anything comes difficult in the future. One, you would have seen, for example, let's say while you walked out of there, you brought back here, you would have resigned, you're back here. How can we take you serious now to say you are with us?
Well, let me
and
address
you
that.
just leave us
First of
halfway
all,
into the journey?
let me address that first of all with the present resignation, and that's this. Wherever, in my view, there is a position in which I may be the source of difficulty for the party, or I may be the source in which the party is placed in an adverse position or in difficult circumstances, that is an issue of accepting responsibility for your actions. And I will say to you, insofar as I believe my actions might have caused difficulty to the party, from where I personally stand, I think that requires, first of all, that I accept responsibility, and depending on the circumstances, in this case, because it was such a major issue, I resigned. For you to say to me, therefore, that the public is not behind me or I may do this again, is asking me in future, where I am in a position in which I am responsible for some adverse impact on the party, that I shouldn't take, first of all, responsibility. The primary thing for me, at least in politics, is that one has to take responsibility for one's actions. And in this case, the allegation was from the newspaper, the way the headline was printed, was that I was in a conflict position, and even though I might recuse myself, the public was unaware of this information. And in those circumstances, I accepted full responsibility for what was becoming a distraction from the AFC's position. If that is now interpreted by the public as flip-flopping, I can only say judge me on my record. In relation to the Commission of Inquiry, again, I will say this. At the time of, first of all, I didn't walk out in the sense of storm out. I waited until there was a pause. But what I will say is this. Where the chairman of the Commission of Inquiry said to me that I could no longer ask questions unless I withdrew a statement which I didn't think I ought to have withdrawn, it meant that in my professional capacity as representative of the victims, the family members of the persons who had been shot, I could no longer be in a position to provide them with legal services. In other words, I knew the only power I have as a lawyer is the ability to cross-examine the Commission of Inquiry and make a final presentation to the Commission of Inquiry. If the chairman says to me or constrains my ability to ask further questions, I am no longer in a position to be able to discharge my professional responsibilities to the clients. So rather than sit down and be mute and be unable to participate in the proceedings as a result of the chairman's decision in the Commission of Inquiry, I did what I was required to do. I notified the client, and indicated that I could no longer participate in the proceedings. If that is considered walking out, I hear what you're saying, but at the end of the day, my engagement is with the client. And if I can't discharge my responsibilities to my client, I have to do what is in their best interest, which is first of all discuss it with them, and secondly say, look, insofar as my ability to continue in these proceedings are concerned, the chairman has restrained me, and therefore I can't be effective. It doesn't mean the end of the world. It does mean that they can go somewhere else. But you categorize it as walking out. This is not a Nigel Hughes decision. This is a decision that I have to take in my professional capacity. And insofar as I was chairman, and it was clear that what was happening there was that my position as secretary was being used to plummet the AFC's position throughout the Amalia Falls, in which it had led, I took the decision that I should resign and accept responsibility. And from where I sit, at the end of the day, for me, it's a question of accepting responsibility for your actions. If the public considers that as flip-flopping, I think it's unfortunate. I can only say that I have given of my time, my effort, my money in the past without hope of fame and fortune for the people who have been affected. And at the end of the day, for me, it's the ordinary person that I represent that counts. And I don't abandon them.
And at the end of the day, here, what you said in that show today, you can tell the public that you're with the AFC for the long haul.
I have always been with the AFC, and unfortunately, the party, I never resigned from the party, first of all. And if you go back to my statement on the day of my resignation, I said I remain committed to the Alliance for Change, and I remain committed to the causes, and I remain committed to the poor and borders. I said that since then. Of course, it wasn't sufficiently attractive at the time for the media to carry it, but that was my position. So even at the time of my resignation, I indicated that I remained an Alliance for Change member. I made that clear to the members of the management committee. And my commitment to the party has always been there. I have not resigned from the party. When I said I was leaving politics, in a Facebook comment which I believe was carried by your newspaper, I indicated at that time, in response to a statement that had been made by a Facebook member saying that my wife and I should ask for redemption, that my understanding of contribution to national development is not about wanting to be in power. It's about you giving of your time and effort towards the national development effort. This resulted in what was clearly a very vicious assault on the character of my wife. I'm accustomed to that. And in those circumstances, I didn't think that, well, let me put it this way, that I had already made efforts to make my contribution to the development of the country. It appeared at that time that I had lost the support of the persons who thought my contribution might not have been adequate, and in those circumstances I thought it would be useful to consider contributing in a different fashion.
Thank you. Any other question?
Good afternoon, everyone. Before you do silence on national struggling meetings and after today, would that continue?
You personally?
Yes.
I personally, as you know, I have never said anything publicly
Yes,
about it. It's not a question of being silent. It's a question, first of all, of acknowledging that in my position as lawyer for Amalia, it wouldn't be appropriate for me to make a public statement. And insofar as my professional relationship with Psychic Global continues and I continue to be the lawyer, it would not be appropriate for me, Nigel Hughes, not the party, for me, Nigel Hughes, to make public statements on the client. That's why the whole purpose of the declaration is because you realize it's a conflict, and I declared it to the party and asked the briefings, and my colleagues considered that, and I could step aside. I am not personally going to comment on it. The party takes positions on it, and the party has a very, very effective management committee that meets weekly. So, insofar as Nigel Hughes personally participating in it, satisfactory, yeah.
My second question is this, in relation to everything that happened with your hurricane and all the effects of the statement, you guys came up with this what's called code of conduct.
That's correct.
Would you say that it's appropriate for the government to do the same?
Oh, certainly, and that is the moral high ground that the Alliance for Change always wanted to put up. We have been confronted by this crisis, if I may put it in inverted commas, and have addressed it. We now know the Guyanese public perception in relation to certain issues. And we feel that we had to come up with a code of conduct for our leaders in the political party called the Alliance for Change. We would hope now that leaders from other political parties also do the same, because we see also, in view of this being a conflict of interest, a number of other conflict of interest scenarios with other political parties.
And has the AFC done an analysis on how much this situation has hurt the party?
Well, we haven't done an analysis as to how much it is hurting, but from letter writing, from a number of people indicating to us that indeed we have taken a hit, we have to acknowledge, yes, there has been some negative repercussions as a result.
Thank you, I recognize Mr. Mayor, but I don't know who you're writing for these days.
Neither do I. Can I ask them 3 questions, please?
Please.
Do you feel like the ground owns you for your?
Sorry, could you ask the camera?
I'll stand up.
Yes.
Do you feel like the ground owns you for your? You take the troops on the top of the bank down again? Question 1. Question 2.
No, I didn't
And
get
we
that.
didn't get the first one.
Do you feel like the ground owns you for your? You took the troops to the top of the hill and then marched them down again. Secondly, why should the public trust a party which flip-flops? And thirdly, surely you set yourself a very high target. You've got 3 lawyers there who represent anybody, because that's what lawyers do. Surely there's going to be another conflict of interest coming down the line.
Well, let me take the last one first. The last one is met by the code of conduct that we have. The hallowed convention, John, has to do with declaring the interest, recusing yourself, and let that decision-making process be outside of the person that has the interest. That occurred here. But what we saw was the public demanding that it ought to have been told too, that there was an interest. And so we're going to make that on a case-by-case basis the practice and hallowed convention from now on. In relation to the second question about flip-flopping, it is not flip-flopping. We thought that Nigel here took the moral high ground, because indeed, as a result of that screaming headline and the number of letter writers and other public opinion on the issue, we were being adversely affected. And indeed, he did the very moral thing, offer his resignation, because he didn't want to see further negative aspects of this party. And we hold him in tremendous esteem for doing that. But having considered and balanced all the considerations, because quite frankly, Nigel is a champion AFC leader, and we have to consider that and weigh this against his removal from chairmanship. And at that National Executive meeting, having weighed all of that, we felt that we are not going to accept his resignation. We pleaded with him, and he said, fine, I'm withdrawing to pursue again that which he was pursuing before.
So the politics are rigged, the morality, the politics of
It is not that, John, I don't believe so, but in politics too, considerations of that puristic morality that you speak about must be considered with the political abilities of this party under people who have leadership skills and are with charisma, if I may put it that way. And indeed, he did the moral thing. He offered his resignation. He did the moral thing. He declared his interest. He did the moral thing and recused. And I think that was morality being exhibited all across the landscape on this issue.
Duke of York? Are you the Duke of York? Have you let people at the top of the hill back down again?
No, we haven't done that. That's right. We don't have dukes again. But the trouble is that we have a certain moral grounding with this political landscape. And indeed, as countries have evolved, England, USA, as the crises have to be met, so we're going to have new codes to address those crises. And that's what we're doing here. We are evolving.
I just want to add, first of all, my personal delight and satisfaction of Nigel has come forward at this press conference to address some very hard-hitting issues, and members of the press also have asked very penetrating questions. I do not want to speculate what the tomorrows will be for this young, vibrant, revolutionary nationalistic movement. but I can say this, that from what I have experienced in the last months, that this movement has taught me what I had not probably learned in 50 years. That people are willing to serve their country at great personal sacrifices. And that Nigel's resignation was in fact a sacrifice, not intended to punish a party that he felt had a role to play for Guyana, to break this gridlock. And I'm amazed, but at the time when we're experiencing this sweltering heat, even in this hall, and we have daily, routine, regular blackouts, when people cannot find chicken to buy for several days and eggs, the Nigel use have been identified as the problem. And is receiving very generous publicity in full-page ads by what I suspect to be cronies of the regime. And so we are glad for the free attention he's getting, and we are amazed, however, that he is not the problem. He's part of the solution. Now, there has been, from what John has asked, the issue of flip-flop. From the very beginning, as Speaker Ralph Ramperan has so eloquently written, the Alliance for Change took a position in favor of hydro project for Guyana. The Alliance for Change has said repeatedly, long before the controversy around Nigel Hughes' association with an American company and the funding of a local company for the project, or of Cathy Hughes' involvement professionally with Cyclocal, that questions had been asked. The infamous Philip Motilal road to nowhere had brought with it the bitterness of a project that was handled badly for the people. And while we spoke in Parliament on that issue of the road, that we were not sure that the money would be spent properly, or that it was in fact money coming from Norway, we did say we would be committed to the Amira Hydro project. We want a hydro project for Guyana. We are in favor of a green economy. We are more particularly in favor of lower tariffs for consumers. So that what came out in the end is that we had suddenly abandoned a previous position in support against the hydro project, and we took a position in favor, was in fact a misnomer. It was an intention, a motive behind it, to show that we have either one, abandoned the opposition, which is the AFC, their position that they were opposed to this project. Secondly, that we had come out in favor of the PPP, so that we are now the enemy of AFNU and the friend of the PPP. And then there are another set of people who have come out and said that we had in fact been influenced by the users, perhaps the money bags, for us to make a dramatic change of position. No such thing has happened. And that is why we believe and treat as suspect the vociferous attack against the Alliance for Change, because we seem to be at this point in time in everybody's agenda, everybody's agenda. Perhaps it's a good place to be when you're looking at it politically, because we are getting the attention from all and exclusion from none. But let me say this. One, we had said at all times, and we repeat it, but because of the domination of the media by the government to our exclusion, our views have never been allowed to be aired, particularly in the state-dominated media. So people don't know that we had said that we were in support of the Amira Falls, but that we were awaiting the due diligence to be made. We have always had as our goalpost the technical studies that had to be made on the project, but that we did not want to close the door on the project. And so, having been given further information as regards who wanted the guarantee of $150 billion, and we had said that it was not absolutely necessary, but it was theoretically possible that a demand would be made for $150 billion if the project failed. We were worried that if we did not allow an amount in form of the guarantee lower than $150 billion, then we would have closed the door and there would be no due diligence. As you now saw, Site Global has walked, and IDB said they are not going to do any continue the studies, so that we are not the better off right now if we didn't know whether in the first place this project was technically, financially, and otherwise feasible, and whether it would have redundant to the benefit of the Guyanese people. And secondly, I want to make this significant point. Our leaders have said that Nigel and Patty had recused themselves from discussions on the issue. But I can tell you this. One, there has never been a vote, the requirement to vote on whether or not Parliament should support the Amila Hydro project. There is no such measure before the Parliament now, or neither has there been anyone before. So anyone who goes out there, particularly the government, alleging that their AFC had killed the Amila Hydro project, is misinforming the Guyanese people. It's highly irresponsible because they have not brought any measure to the Parliament that would have required the Parliament to approve or not approve of a hydro project. They had the flora and fauna, which is a misnomer, which was badly, incorrectly named the hydro project bill, and people felt that that is the one that we were voting on, that it had to do with the hydro project, and the other one was a motion dealing with the guarantee, the ceiling, of raising the ceiling from $1 billion to $150 billion. Now, I want to say this, that Catherine Hughes, who is a member of the Management Committee and the NEC of the Alliance for Change, and in fact had enjoyed a consultancy with Site Global, an American company, had gone into the Parliament and voted on the 18th of July with her colleagues of the Alliance for Change against the amendment to the hydro project bill, the flora and fauna, as well as the motion of the ceiling. If there had been a conflict of interest with her consultancy, then one would have expected that Cathy Hughes would not have stood to party discipline, that she would have broken ranks. So that what is important in all of this, while the fingers are being pointed at Nigel Hughes, because he had not participated in any of the discussions to do with the hydro project inside the Alliance for Change, had not influenced anyone, we would have said that those media and those politicians who were critical of Nigel would have applauded Cathy Hughes for standing up against her own interests. Which is why I said originally that people came into this movement. I've met people who at great personal sacrifice stood for what they felt was right and in the interest of the country. Catherine Hughes stood for Guyana in saying on the first occasion when the government refused to cede a discussion and the approval of the local government reform bills, and when they decided that they were unilaterally going to bulldoze in the Parliament their measures dealing with the hydro project, we decided on that occasion we were not supporting those measures, government measures. And Catherine Hughes voted against those measures, so that if it is said that she was a Tory of Site Global, then they couldn't explain why is it that she stood with her party against the interests her client represented. And I applaud her as a woman and as a leader of this movement. And this is all the validation that we need to show that Alliance for Change has dealt with conflict of interest situation in the national interest. And I have every reason to believe that now that the guidelines for disclosures have been pronounced, that we would be able to have a better way of dealing with perceived, potential, possible conflict of interest. As John said, we are 3 lawyers up here. Every day we'll be having to confront these issues between our professional interests and our political callings. But we have some guidelines now. At least I know this seems to be the first political party in Guyana that has come out so boldly to address this issue, because it is, in fact, a mischief at large in Guyana.
The Speaker will write to the President, and I understand too that he's going to attach with the letter that he's going to write to the President the 4 bills. So in a sense, it will be from the Speaker to the President's desk, those 4 bills, and the 21 days, I suppose, will start being calculated from then. Because if we are to allow the Attorney General to simply hold it forever, and then use this 21 days because it hasn't reached his desk, then we're not going to go anywhere. And I think strategically, the Speaker will have to work out that in his letter as to the status, he also attaches as 4 schedules the 4 bills for him. So at least he would have had it from the leader of the Legislative Assembly.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, let me thank you for being here.